All right, let's dive into the pretty dramatic origin story of the U.S. Navy. It's a wild tale of pirates, really tough choices, and how a brand new nation had to figure out how to fight for its own survival on the world stage.
So picture this. It's 1783. America has just won its independence from Britain. That's great, right? But here's the catch. In doing so, it stepped right out from under the giant protective umbrella of the British Royal Navy. And that made its merchant ships a floating buffet for the world's most dangerous pirates.
And this created a huge problem. It's a paradox, really. The United States was a sovereign nation on paper, but at sea, it was completely powerless.
I mean, think about it. The country was drowning in war debt. So, to save money, they dismantled the entire Continental Navy. By 1785, the U.S. had exactly 0 warships. And word gets out to the Barbary pirates of North Africa that American ships are now easy pickings.
Well, you can probably guess what happened next. It didn't take long. The first American ships were captured in 1784 and 85, and this kicked off a crisis that literally split the founding fathers on what to do next.
And this is where things get really fascinating. You've got two of the biggest names in American history, John Adams and Thomas Jefferson, on totally opposite sides of the argument. Adams, the pragmatist, basically said, look, we're broke, it's cheaper to just pay them off. But Jefferson, the idealist, was having none of it. He argued that paying tribute was dishonorable and would only invite more attacks. His solution? Build a navy. Jefferson's position got a whole lot stronger after a Tripolitan envoy in London gave this pretty chilling reason for their attacks. He said it was their religious duty to make war on any nation that didn't acknowledge their authority. So yeah, this made it crystal clear. This was never just about money, it was about power.
And this wasn't some abstract political debate. Real people were paying the price. While diplomacy managed to free the crew of the Betsy, 21 American sailors from the Maria and the Dauphin, well, they were left to rot in harsh Algerian prisons for over a decade. For a few years, things quieted down, but only because of help from a very unlikely place. But when that protection suddenly vanished, the crisis just exploded. It's kind of funny, actually. Portugal was at war with Algiers, so the Portuguese Navy had this tight blockade on the Straits of Gibraltar. It basically acted like a giant cork in a bottle, keeping the Algerian pirates trapped inside the Mediterranean. America was getting a free pass. But then, in 1793, the British came in and brokered a truce. The Portuguese Navy sailed away, and that cork was pulled. The pirates surged out into the Atlantic, and in just a single season, they captured 11 American ships. This timeline just shows how fast it all went down. It was immediate, and it was catastrophic. And it proved beyond a shadow of a doubt that the American policy of unarmed neutrality had completely, utterly failed. That disaster, though, was the wake-up call. It finally gave the government the political will to do something. And that something was to give birth to the United States Navy. So, President George Washington signed the Naval Act of 1794. But it wasn't easy. It was a compromise, and to appease the opponents of a navy, they included a really crucial catch. Construction on the new ships would stop if peace was made with Algiers. The designer, a genius named Joshua Humphreys, knew America couldn't build a massive navy. So his idea was, let's not build more, let's build better. He designed these things called super frigates. Their hulls were made from southern live oak, so dense that cannonballs would literally bounce off. They carried heavier guns than any other frigate, and they were designed to be bigger and faster. The strategy was brilliant. They could outrun what they couldn't outfight. And then, you're not going to believe it, a peace treaty is signed, and that clause in the Naval Act gets triggered. Construction on the new navy grinds to a halt. But Washington, seeing how critical this was, managed to persuade Congress to at least finish the 3 ships that were closest to being done. And thank goodness he did, because those ships were the United States, the Constellation, and the legendary Constitution. So the new ships were finally in the water, and they were about to get their trial by fire, first in an undeclared war with France, and then in a final showdown back where it all started, with the Barbary pirates. In what's called the quasi-war with France, the USS Constellation got into a fight with a French frigate and won, decisively. This was a huge moment. It proved the super frigates worked, and it proved that American sailors could go toe-to-toe with a major European power and win. But just as the Navy was gaining confidence, it faced its greatest challenge yet. In 1801, the Pasha of Tripoli declared war, leading to a disastrous setback.
The frigate USS Philadelphia was captured intact. This was a strategic nightmare. Now the enemy had one of America's most advanced warships, complete with its crew of 307 sailors.
So now what do you do? I mean, seriously, what's the plan? The Navy had to answer an almost impossible question. How do you neutralize this massive threat without launching a full-scale invasion?
The answer came from a young lieutenant named Stephen Decatur, who led one of the most daring raids in naval history. He and 75 volunteers disguised a small boat, sailed right into the enemy harbor at night, boarded the Philadelphia, and burned it to the waterline. Then they escaped under heavy fire without a single American life lost. It was so bold, it was later called the most bold and daring act of the age. The final blow, though, was a stunning land attack. A handful of U.S. Marines led an assault that captured the city of Derna. It was the first time the American flag was ever raised over a captured city in the Old World, and it finally forced the Pasha to sign a peace treaty.
Through this whole trial by fire, the United States had transformed itself. It went from a nation paying tribute to pirates to a nation that could dictate its own peace terms. It had achieved true maritime sovereignty.
You know, the story of the Navy's birth really leaves us with a powerful idea to think about. It showed that sovereignty on paper doesn't mean much without the power to actually defend it. And that lesson, right there, is something that has shaped American foreign policy ever since.